Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran. And tonight we'll start with the play from our previous episode 35. We have A, 1st and 10 from the B20 on the left hash, 5 seconds to go in the first quarter. QB A12 rolls to his right, throws a pass to A80 in the right corner of the end zone. The ball falls incomplete. The game clock reads 0, and the back judge has a flag for DPI. And we asked, as usual, your enforcement in high school and college, game clock status, play clock status, and Ryan threw a bonus in as to what hash the ball would be on. So, in high school, we will go half the distance from the previous spot, and we'll replay the down. This down will be untimed, so it will be a 1st and goal from the B10, but we'll still be in the first quarter with an untimed down. And since we're going from the previous spot, we will still be on the left hash. Now, in college, we will not have an untimed down. That's a new rule change, remember. So since we have the end of the first quarter, just would be the same with the end of the third quarter as well. But since we're the end of the first quarter, we carry that penalty over to start the next quarter. If this was the second quarter or the fourth quarter, we would have an untimed down. So we'll take this penalty at the start of the second quarter. However, we'll go the full 15 yards from the previous spot. So we'll have a 1st and goal from the B5. So a little bit difference there because, again, with high school, we would only have one more play. A would likely keep the ball if they didn't score a touchdown or have a turnover, of course. But with college, we're in the second quarter, and some time will run off the clock because we'll start it. So a little bit different, a little nuance there.
Yeah, a couple things to remember here. In high school, we can go half the distance on DPI. In college, except for a try down, which is a very special exception. So for the most part, in any of your normal scrimmage downs, we'll never go half the distance on DPI. Both of these plays end up with a first down, but remember, that's because in college, it's an automatic first down. A DPI is an automatic first down, whereas in high school, it's not automatic. It's just we went 10 yards from 1st and 10 at the 20 to the 10, so it results in a first down. So the down is going to end up the same. It's just different ways of getting there between the two levels.
So tonight we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Brett Henninger. Brett, thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say you've been absolutely instrumental in my career. And I know you had a hand in my promotion to GLVC this year. Can't thank you enough for that. I really do appreciate that. I think we met 5 years ago going to a scrimmage. And we talked the whole way down. I didn't know you. You didn't know me. But just you were so easy to talk to. And it might have been your first or second year in the MAC. That's a spoiler. It's a teaser. We got some other news about that here in a minute. But, gosh, you just treated me like I was one of the guys. And I can't thank you enough. On the field, locker room, car ride, it was an absolute blast. And I appreciate everything you've done for me the last couple of years. And I know I speak for other officials, too. Some of the meetings that we have, just the number of guys that you've dealt with have been amazing. So thank you.
Right. Brett's someone who's been instrumental to tons of us in this area, especially the younger officials coming up, coordinating the rules meetings that we have in the Indianapolis area, giving us opportunities on the field to see snaps, get practice in, work out the kinks on our own, but also give us feedback. So he's been very helpful to me as well, to tons of others. And as Michael alluded to, Brett, I know you've had some recent good news to share as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks to both of you for the kind words. Very, very nice of both of you. And first of all, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to join the podcast. I think what you both are doing is great for the officials, officiating community here, not just in Indiana, but anywhere that officials want to better themselves and listen to great resources like podcasts. So kudos to you guys for the great work and time that you guys put into this. So, just kind of been a really crazy off season. For me, found out back, in March 11th at 10:15 a.m. Not that anyone's remembering or anything. That I got a phone call to move up to the staff of the Big Ten Conference, which is just really, very kind of a surreal moment, but one that's definitely through a lot of hard work, but obviously a lot of guidance and kind of following a lot of other people that have kind of led the way and for opportunities like this to come along. So it's definitely been a very, very humbling off season, but one that I'm definitely extremely excited for. So.
Oh, congratulations, Brett. Very well earned.
Congratulations. Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I know when I've heard NFL officials talk, they always have the time down to the second or the minute from when they got the call. So it sounds like that's a similar experience that you had.
Yeah, very much, very much. It was kind of an interesting situation. My wife was actually on day 6 of a 7-day girls trip to Europe that she was on, and so I was home by myself with. I've got 3 girls. I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and it was a Monday, and the girls' school was closed that day, which my wife kindly reminded me on her way out the door, I think to the airport. Oh, hey, by the way, the last day you're home with them, they don't have school, so you got them for the whole day by yourself. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to take the day off of work. We're going to go see a movie. We're just going to like chill out for the day, and we're getting ready to go to the movie. And I look down, my phone's ringing, and it's Bob Wagner, who's kind of the assistant supervisor of officials in the COC, which is the Big Ten, the MAC of the Missouri Valley. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, this is interesting.
This
So
is interesting.
I honestly kind of thought maybe I was, helping to put together a Zoom call coming up or something like that. I didn't know what to think, and answered the phone, and, told me the news, and got off the phone, and my 6-year-old standing there staring at me like, who is that? And I'm like, oh, I found out I just got hired in the Big Ten. And she goes, okay, when are we going to the movies? Like, and so it brings you down, brings you back to reality pretty quick. So it kind of another funny story with it. My wife was, like I said, she was in Austria, I think is where she was at the time. And she's scrambling to like buy the kids, presents and stuff because it's her last day. And so she's like, hey, do you want anything? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, you need to call me. Like, I need to talk to you. Then I'm like, everything's okay, by the way, but you need to call me. And there's like no response. And so finally I sent her a text and I said, hey, buy me a t-shirt that says Big Ten on it. And then she calls me, pretty much right away after that. And I think picked up on the message. So
Nice.
But yeah, it was a crazy morning, very unexpected. That's absolutely for sure.
That's a great memory, and obviously something you'll all enjoy and talk about for some time. So
yeah,
congratulations once again, Brett.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So Big Ten now. Tell the folks how it started. What was the seed that planted this journey?
Yeah, for sure. So I really got into officiating like a lot of people do, right? My father, so my dad officiated football. I think he had officiated high school football for about 8 or 9 years probably. And my junior year of high school, he was like, hey, you're going to make some, side money, and you're going to come referee CYO football games with me. And so back in the day, you had 2 officials working, CYO games. You just worked the line of scrimmage on both sidelines. And I remember my very first game ever was Dennis Schinderly, who's a longtime Division I, Missouri Valley official from the Indianapolis area. His one of his kids was playing on the team, and my dad obviously knew Dennis, and so they're talking before the game, and my dad's like, my son's first game ever. And Dennis is like, I'll put him on our sideline, put him on our sideline. And I'm thinking, no way do I want to go over there. This guy's going to yell at me the entire time. He actually knows what he's doing. Nevertheless, these other parents who are going to yell at me anyway. And so my dad's like, yep, 100%, go over there with Dennis. And it was the best thing ever. I mean, Dennis literally, there was no coach's box that day because Dennis was like literally forgot to coach his kids team and followed me from goal line to goal line, helping me with, they were snapping the ball at the 5-yard line. He's like, okay, as soon as the ball snapped, you got to go to the goal line and you're working back. And, I'm trying to make sure I had my bean bag or whatever still with me. And, so cool. Every time I see Dennis, I always remind him of that he was one of my first officiating instructor, I guess, on the field. So,
that's so cool.
That's a heck.
but yeah, that's essentially how I got started. So
That's a heck of a start for youth football. I think most of us who have someone following us up and down the sidelines, they're not that helpful. The words are
right.
different, than they're much less supportive when we're doing youth football at that age.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, like I think that honestly was it really meant a lot to me to
Sure.
see like how much like we all give back to each other, right? Because I mean, if any of us were in that situation, like we would do the same thing, right?
Right.
And for me, like you hear like kind of horror stories of people that work their first game or whatever, and it was terrible.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for me, it was like, man, this is great. Like not every game's like this. You don't have somebody like kind of helping you out and telling you what to do that's actually helpful. So,
Yeah, how was the
um,
next CYO game?
it went downhill pretty quick, after that. So, but no, after I got out of high school, I got my high school license and worked, kind of thought, hey, and now I got my license, I'm going to be on my dad's crew. And my dad's like, nope, like you're
Oh,
working, you're cutting your teeth and, if you want to be on the crew, you're going to earn a spot on the crew. And, that was the best thing that happened because I got to work with a lot of different crews around the city and,
Right.
got to meet a lot of different people. And, after kind of bouncing around for a year or two with some different crews, I got the chance to work with my dad for about 4 or 5 years on the same high school crew. And that was just a blast. It was a lot of fun, being able to work together um, and he, kind of convinced me into like, you really need to try to get into college football, like really try to,
Mhm.
try to do this. He kind of got started later on in life and he's like, you started officiating when you're 16, 17 years old. Like there's, an opportunity maybe for you to do something with this. And so I went to my first, college football clinic at Dick Honig's clinic in the spring of 2008 was the first time I'd ever went to a college clinic and met Larry Snyder there and a ton of other people that were extremely helpful to, a kid who wasn't even out of college yet, going to a college football clinic. And, and yeah, one thing kind of led to another and, got a handful of scrimmages and JV games that next year. And kind of a funny story that I always tell every official that's starting out. I was finishing up my senior year in college and I had a really flexible job and I could basically kind of pick my own hours. And I remember somebody bailed on a JV game at DePaul on a Monday and Larry sends out like an emergency email. Larry Snyder used to be the supervisor of officials of the Heartland Conference. And he sends out this email at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need somebody, for a JV game today at DePaul at 5 o'clock. And I'm looking at my schedule and I'm like, I could probably get out of work and go do it. And so I respond back. Larry calls me. He's like, great. Like, I'm going to go to the game. Let's ride together. So I'm thinking, okay, this isn't a bad deal. So we ride together to the game, come back. Don't really feel like anyone like died or anything. So I don't think I screwed up anything too bad. And after the game, Larry's, calls and he's like, hey, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And the next Monday, I get a phone call from him and he's like, hey, I want you to work, can you work a game at DePaul this Saturday? And I mean, I swear the first thing that went through my mind was, why are they playing a JV game on a Saturday? Like, that's kind of silly, and I think I asked him, I was like, what? And he's like, no, you're going to work with Steve Swartz's crew. Like it's a varsity game, I'll have Steve connect with you, with the details. And, one thing led to another, worked the game. The next year, the person who I filled in for, moved to another conference. And so there was an opening on that crew. And at the end of the year, Steve Swartz was like, hey, I'll just take that kid that worked that game with us at DePaul. And
nice.
that's kind of how I got in, so it's just, I always tell new officials like, hey, just, you never know when you're going to get an opportunity, and you just got to take as many opportunities as you get. Cause so much of this is just by chance, right? Being at the right place at the right time. And, I was definitely very much in the right place at the right time
Sure.
in October of 2008. So.
Well, Brett, we've talked about some things that I imagine are great memories of yours, both the recent promotion and as well as your very first game, being able to have somebody experienced help you out throughout that. What are some of the other great memories that you think about often or that come to mind for you when you look back at your career so far?
Yeah, for sure. And I was kind of thinking about this earlier, like how it's funny for us how we're never like the memories for us aren't really like the games itself, right? It's like
Right.
the either the stuff that happened before the game or, on the ride home from the game or whatever it might be. So I mean, for me, like the probably the best, memories for me throughout this was, I did get a chance in, 20 about 2012, I made the jump from Division 3 to Division 2. And when I did that, I kind of stopped working high school football just because of the travel commitment. And so in about 2015, my dad decided, hey, I'm going to hang it up. It's going to be my last year working high school football for him. And so I got the chance that we had like an off week, and a guy on his crew actually reached out to me and asked, hey, would you want to fill in for me and work a game, with your dad, like his last year. And so I got a chance to work a high school game with my dad in 2015 at Edgewood High School, actually is where it was at. And,
Yeah.
it was great. Just a
Nice.
really fun time. And then, another great memory was, in 2014, I was on a Division 2 crew, and the crew was, a lot of kind of younger officials. We all had a lot of aspirations to move up, and we kind of operated our Division 2 crew like a Division 1 crew. Like we wanted to get in the night before, have a really structured pregame. We put a lot of time into it. And just had a really fun season, like the whole year. And, at the end of the season, our entire crew got the chance to work a Division 2 second round playoff game. And, just the whole experience with that was just great. The game was at Minnesota State, Mankato, and all of us were basically from like Chicago, Indiana, Cincinnati, and we all drove up together, so we drove like 10 hours in my mom's minivan, to work the game. And, and we absolutely crushed it. We put it in the upper deck during the game. Was an unbelievable game to work, went into overtime. Just kind of one of those games where you just sit back and let them play,
Right.
and it was just the whole experience was great. This past season, one of the things I always really wanted to, like a dream or kind of a goal of mine, was I always wanted to work like a postseason assignment and allow my family to like come to the game. And so this past year, I worked the famous Toastery Bowl, which was kind of unique in the fact that it was normally the Bahamas Bowl, and our crew we were really lucky to get the Bahamas Bowl the year that the Bahamas Stadium was being redone. So we got
So you weren't in a new stadium, you say?
we were not in the new stadium, and we were not in the Bahamas. So we worked the famous Toastery Bowl, which was a great experience. Like they took really good care of us. And but my parents went down to the game. My wife went to it. Our oldest two girls went to the game. And it was awesome. It was on my birthday, even to like make it even better. The game was a fun game to work. So that was just another, pretty recent, memory that was definitely one that I'll always really, really cherish. So, and just the friendships, by doing this, it's just something that, you just can never, you can't, you just can't like put it into words to people, right? About like, all the people that I talk to on the phone anymore are other football officials. Like, it's kind of funny how it just kind of evolves into, you work with somebody, you get on a crew with somebody, you become friends, and it just kind of goes from there. So it's definitely been just so lucky, so far to have so many great memories.
So talking about memories and talked a little bit about how you got started. Is there anybody that influenced you heavily? I mean, obviously you talked about your dad, who kind of pushed you in that direction and pushed you to go to college. Any other big influences, whether they helped inspire you, they got you moving, or is there anybody you try to model your officiating style after?
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, like you said, my dad definitely is, one big one that comes to mind. I mean, I don't think I would have even started doing this if it wasn't for him. Somebody that really kind of took me in as a mentor, was Dennis Jackson. Dennis is the current supervisor of officials for the Heartland Conference right now. And, I met Dennis, I think working a scrimmage, I think back in 2008, I think maybe. Yeah, it was right when I first started out, and kind of funny. Him and I actually kind of bonded a lot about IndyCar racing. Kind of randomly. Dennis is a big like IndyCar racing guy, and I was kind of like, I know a little bit about IndyCar racing, and so I kind of figured, okay, here's a guy that's like a long time Division I official, like maybe this might be kind of an easy way to make a connection with him, and it just we kind of took off from there. And I mean, we're still, I mean, I consider Dennis one of my best friends, and this is 16 years later or whatever. So, but he really did a lot for me to kind of connect me as someone who's just getting started out in Division III, like connecting me with a lot of Division I officials, and including me in like question of the day emails and, working on like rules quizzes and stuff together. And something that's been really cool about Dennis and I's relationship is that over the past 6 years in the MAC, we've been on the same crew together. He's, since has kind of moved on to the replay side. And, Dennis used to be a deep wing, which is the position that I work. And, after games, it's always great to be able to talk to him about plays that happened. And, he can kind of give me his opinion on, hey, maybe you could have handled it this way, or, hey, did you think about maybe saying this to the coach, or, whatever it might be. So for me, like selfishly, I've kind of had my own like coach essentially, and someone that I've known for just such a long time and have had, such a great relationship with. So, and I mean, there's so many, Division I officials and officials from Indianapolis that, have, kind of paved the way, and, I mean, you guys said a lot of really kind things about me at the start of this podcast, but, I'm sitting here thinking in my head about all the people who came before me that did the same things for me, and then you guys are going to do the same things for other people, and that's just, it's just how this works, and, so I think there's so many people, that I think have had a really big influence in my career, and not just me, but just a lot of people, around the area. I think one of the things that I think is really great about, you two, especially, that, you find people that are kind of at the same, like, path, like along the journey, to be able to work on rules together with, or to study together with. And, for me, Rich Edwards and Adam McClurg, who were two other Division I officials from the Indianapolis area, we've been working on, rules quizzes and tests together for probably the past 10, 11 years. I mentioned that Division II second round playoff game. Both of those guys were on that crew together with me. So, I mean, we've been working together since then, and that's how you get better, just by finding a group of, 2, 3 other people, and, you work on rules tests together. And, I know we always really drive each other. And, if somebody, tries to miss maybe a couple of rules meetings or whatever, we kind of give each other a hard time and, kind of guilt them back into doing it. And, so for us, like, we definitely, the three of us kind of help push each other, and I consider them a big influence, on me as well. So.
I know you talked about, I guess I'll use a movie term, the circle of life, I guess, with officials, and that there's people who pulled us up, and it's our duties, I guess, to do the same in return for those who are coming behind us. Are there, I know obviously we've talked about you and Rich with the rules meetings in the area, and setting up tons of scrimmage opportunities for lots of officials.
Sure.
Are there other programs that you're involved in, or other ideas you have, or things you're working on to help bring along other officials or get other people, excited for our avocation?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know, one thing that I've been involved with for really probably about the last 8 years is our IFOA college officiating clinic here in the
Right.
Indianapolis area. So the IFOA is the Indiana Football Officials Association, and Matt Edwards, who is a NFL back judge now, Matt moved from Indianapolis to Columbus, Ohio, a handful of years ago. Matt and I, kind of started this clinic up, probably about 8 years ago. I would say was kind of our first one that we did, and we had it in the basement of like Marian University, and I mean it was rough, and we had about 40 people there. I mean it was great. I mean we had a lot of people that very willingly volunteered their time to come and work. I mean our group of clinicians, I think, that are always willing to come to that clinic, I think is what makes it such a great clinic. It's not
Right.
by any means, it's not me or the clinic itself. It's the people that we get to come and teach at it. And since then we've gone from 40 people to, I think we didn't have it this past year because of some logistical issues, but I think our last one in 2023, we had 140 people at it. And so
That's awesome.
that's something that, I know we're definitely, kind of chomping at the bit to get that clinic back up again, in 2025. I know we normally always do it like the last weekend in February, for that. So, I mean, we can definitely try to get some details maybe sent over,
Sure.
or something to you guys for that.
Sure. Yeah. We'd love to publish that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, have been recently kind of involved with the Great Lakes Valley Conference, as Michael will become very familiar with, over the next several years. Had the opportunity to kind of serve in kind of a unique capacity as an assistant supervisor to work with, alongside Mike McCann, who is the supervisor of officials for the conference. And, and Mike really, gave me a lot of growth in my career by allowing me to help him, from that standpoint. And, being able to see things from a different lens, which honestly still working on the field really helps me a lot, from kind of seeing how, maybe emails that coaches send in after a game and kind of seeing things from their point of view. It allows you to just kind of look at things from a little bit of a wider lens, than sometimes we do when we're on the field. So I've kind of gone from that role now, and I think we'll serve in kind of a capacity as like a position trainer, for the conference. So I'm really looking forward to still staying involved in the conference and having the ability to give back and work with some other officials. One thing that I kind of gotten involved with the past couple of years is, so I go to Butler, every fall and do kind of a rules presentation on, rule changes or just, points of emphasis for the upcoming season. And that's something that I know you guys have kind of a pretty wide reach for high school officials. And, one of the things I try to incorporate in my rules talk is I try to incorporate being an official. I always joke with the coach at Butler and say, hey, I'm not going to charge anything, but my fee is going to be that I get 5 minutes to talk about officiating, and hopes to maybe pull a couple of players, and want to do that. And I used to do that at Marian as well. And it got a couple of officials, I think, involved. And, one of the challenges I think I'd like to kind of throw out there to a lot of your listeners would be, if you're a high school official, like try to reach out to a coach or a staff member, at a high school, maybe locally to you, and see if they'd be interested in having you come and do a rules presentation to their team. I mean, it doesn't have to be a, couple hour presentation. It could be a 5-10 minute talk over the rule changes or over points of emphasis. And not only are you going to probably make yourself better, right, by preparing for something like that, but also, talk a little bit about being an official. And, a lot of those high school players aren't going to be able to go play football at the next level. So it's a great way, obviously, to stay involved in the game and, and make some extra money and, whatever. There's so many benefits to doing this. But, that's kind of a challenge that I would kind of throw out there to, a lot of your officials that are working high school football to, still try to make some kind of connection there with maybe a local school and see if there's an ability to do that. Cause it's something for me that I know really gets me ready to start the season, but, I'm always in hopes that my email is going to be flooded with a couple of messages of guys that are, hey, I'm kind of interested in doing that, or, whatever it might be. So,
Right.
Quick, want a sidebar here. I know you were the assistant supervisor for the GOVC. Can you, briefly talk about, as that new guy, do's and don'ts, right? If somebody's trying to make that impression on that supervisor, give our listeners some do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts of like working with a new supervisor, with the new boss?
Yeah.
I would say invite him to your podcast. That's a big do, So
there you go.
Check, right? I think the biggest thing is to be coachable. I really think at the end of the day, and that's like anything in life, right? I don't think football is anything unique, but I think if, they see you do something, they see you make a mistake, they see you, maybe if it's not even a mistake, maybe it's just a situation you handled well, but you could have maybe handled a little bit better. And they tell you, hey, this is what I'd like for you to do next time. Go out there and the next time you have a chance to showcase it, do it. I think that's kind of the number one thing. As an official who works for a supervisor, I know for me, that's always like one of the things that I always want to try to keep in mind is, hey, I don't want to screw up the same thing twice. And I think too, especially like by being new, like just being kind of embracing being new a little bit, and just kind of sitting back and listening, but like carrying a big stick, like if you got to step up, like step up. And now when you step up and say, hey guys, this isn't right. Now everyone kind of sits back and thinks, okay, hey, maybe he's got a point here, cause he doesn't normally say a whole lot, so, so I do think there's a lot to be said about, when you are new and, I know these are things I'm kind of trying to go through for myself as well, with kind of this new opportunity that I have, on, how do you kind of balance like, hey, I'm going to kind of sit back and just kind of learn and listen and observe. But then also, when an opportunity comes up, I think as a supervisor, you want to see somebody step up and take control, or somebody step up and try to right the ship.
Awesome.
All right, Brett, one of the things we like to talk about with our guests, especially those who work at high levels, such that your time commitment is more so than mine is or Michael's, and that's no a slight to Michael. It's just we know a MAC official or Big Ten official, between travel and preparation, there's just a lot involved. How do you balance your work life? You talked about your family as well, and then the time that officiating takes. How do you strike that balance between those three areas of your life?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely with a lot of grace, I think, and it's tough. It's not easy to do. And I think at any level, especially if you're working Friday nights and Saturdays, and, if you're working maybe a little bit during the week as well too. And, for me, one thing that I really try to do a lot is I try to just be as routine as possible, like during the season. And so, kind of a routine that I like to try to follow is, so if I work a game on a Saturday, I try to, obviously you travel Saturday or Sunday or whatever that looks like, but then I want to try to focus like Sunday and Monday to like wrap that game up, like just to put that game to bed, film review, share plays with your crew, whatever it goes into it. And then what I like to do is like, I like to take Tuesday, and sometimes Mondays we have our rules meetings, stuff like that. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of end the week for me, So I know for me, like if I'm driving home from a rules meeting that we have, I'm kind of in my head thinking like, okay, if I showed a play there or whatever, like, hey, it's over. Like we're moving on. Um, for me, I like on Tuesdays, I try to not do anything football based. Like I'll try to take the kids to go to the park or go get ice cream, or we go out to eat as a family, or we try to do something where it's just not football related, whatsoever. And then, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's kind of looking at the upcoming game, so I like to kind of take that Tuesday as like a buffer, to say, okay, we're not going to carry anything else over from last week. And now we're going to focus on this week. Um, I think obviously trying to find, like, you have to be very efficient. I think, my girls last fall did gymnastics, and they went to this like school where it was huge. Like, I mean, you couldn't like watch them basically. Like they would go in like the back corner or go somewhere else, and you couldn't really see what's going on because you're looking through like 35 different other classes. And I would bring like that's where I would do like my weekly rules quiz when I'm sitting there, so they're there for an hour, and so I would kind of just sit there and go through questions. And it's like, hey, I can spend some time with them by bringing them here, and and I'm here. If they're right in front of me, I can watch them, but then if they kind of go into another area, like I'll hop on and knock out a couple of rules questions or something. But at least, and I'd rather be doing it there when I'm kind of by myself with them rather than at home sitting on the couch with my wife or something like that. I could be more kind of present, when we're in those kind of situations. But I think really, I think it just is a lot of communication, especially like working in the MAC, when you get into November and you have MACtion games and you're going to, Akron on a Tuesday night, and, you got to figure out like who's picking the kids up from daycare on Monday, and, are you able to come back and get them off the bus Wednesday, or, am I going to have to do that or whatever. So it's just a lot of communication, to make sure that you're on the same page. And, at the end of the day, like the success that I have, in my opinion, is the success that like my family has, because, I none of us can do it without the support of our family members. Right. I mean, my Matt Edwards, who I, mentioned him earlier, when I got into the MAC, he gave me a piece of advice, and he just said, if you ever get a bowl game, take your wife, because they're putting in just as much work as you are, to make this happen.
Right.
And so that's something that I've always done. I've been fortunate enough to work a couple of postseason assignments. My wife's always came with me. And then as my kids kind of start to get older, like, we'll bring them with me as well, because there's things that we're missing, that they're doing as well too, which makes this really tough. But I truly do look at it as, I couldn't be successful without their support. So I think it's just, that open communication and just knowing that they want to see us succeed, just as much as we want to succeed. So
that's awesome.
I guess my one quick follow-up, sorry to jump in on you, Michael.
Nope.
Brett, how are you going to miss that midweek MACtion once we get into November and all?
You know what? So I'm very fortunate, and I have a very flexible job, to where I could work remotely. And I honestly, I like them. I really like working the midweek games, because then you're home on the weekends, and it's kind of a unique situation where you get into November, and, and you're hanging out around the house all day Saturday and Sunday. And I know my wife liked them too, because she's like, hey, the kids are in school for most of the part of the day. And I mean, it's, it's a lot, I think, being one parent and having to deal with, multiple kids. Michael's wife probably can attest to that. But I honestly, I kind of like them. They're a little unique, obviously, and they kind of screw up your routine throughout the week, but it's kind of nice being home on the weekends. So
Sure.
I'll miss the MACtion games a little bit. So
I understand.
Brett, is there anything else you want to plug for our listeners? Again, we appreciate having you for this time. Anything else you got going on that you want to share?
Not a lot. I mean, just, once again, just a big thanks to you guys. I mean, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm really honored to be asked to be part of the podcast. And, I think that, for people that are listening to this, like, congrats to you guys for listening, because you're spending time on our advocation, and, you're listening to this podcast to make yourself as a better official. And I think, I think we're kind of in the off season. We're trying to think about as much things as we can do, right, to just prepare ourselves and be ready to work. And I think what you guys are doing by something like this is great. With the questions you guys have, where you guys pose those every podcast and go through the rule changes and have different topics. I think it's great. So I would say, for officials out there, like, try to find something to be useful. Just try to find something to give back as well, because there's so many people to pull us along the way that, once you kind of get to that spot, reach back and help, pull somebody along with you, because that's just what this is all about.
Well, Brett, thanks for your time. I think, as
Yes.
Michael and I have both alluded to, we're both very grateful for all that you've done for us and continue to do for us. And we are incredibly thrilled for you and happy for you with the new opportunity that you'll have in the Big Ten. And we look forward to seeing you out in the field this fall.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it once again. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to thank Brett Henninger for joining us once again. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us for another episode of Learn Your Stripes. For now, as always, we'll leave you with a play to consider.
Okay, we're on a try this time. A has just scored a touchdown. So on the try, A trails 28-30, so down by 2. And there are 10 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. A12's pass is intercepted in the end zone by B29. A80 tackles B29 immediately by the face mask. B29 then stands up and retaliates by punching A80. What is your ruling in high school and college?
We'll discuss that play at the start of our next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made a mistake, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can also contact us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com if you're interested in sponsoring an episode or advertising on the show. You can find us on your app of choice or obtain episodes at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast, on Instagram at the same name, and on X at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please tell your friends and rate us 5 stars and leave a review on your app of choice. We'll see you back here soon. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.